I'm my brother's keeper. I'm my sister's guide. Standing here together with nothing left to hide. We lift each other up when the world feels torn apart. We're keepers of the flame. We're the healers of the heart.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to My Other's Keeper. How you doing tonight? I'm so
I'm
glad.
doing good. Your song is catchy. I like that. I was sitting here just going along.
I'm making myself a beverage, and I feel like I'm holding a bottle for a baby because I've got
Oh,
this in my arm, and then I've got this kind of going on, and okay. So no, this is just my protein shake. So my protein shake, and then oat milk is going to go in, and then we'll be good. So
what do you mix it with?
I mix decaf instant coffee with some water. And because this is a 40-ounce cup, so it's huge, I have 2 of these in here. And it is Premier Protein.
That's what I drink, the Premier
Yeah,
Protein.
they're wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you mix it with coffee, and then I put some oat milk to finish it up, because now it's up to about there. Oh, yeah, you can see the shadow. Up to about there. And then I'll top it up with oat milk. And if you enjoy Starbucks, I enjoy Starbucks. It's wonderful. You have to, like, you still have to restrict yourself. Of course, there's calories and whatever. But with the protein and the vitamins and stuff, it's healthy stuff.
Yeah, that's what I do. I put the protein shake in my coffee instead of like sugar and cream.
Exactly.
I use the protein shake.
Exactly right. Yes. And something else we can talk about another time is you have had bariatric surgery, have you not?
Yes.
Yeah, so have I. So we need to up our protein in a big way, more than most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something I never realized, how important that protein really is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, there we go. That's my supper. Got it. So Crystal is here. Hi, and Indigo, stitching it up. Nice to see you. Living my best life at 60. Oh, she's here too, huh? Hey, Echo. And oh, either I am frozen or you are frozen, one or the other, and I don't know what it is. There we go.
There we are.
There. Okay.
I was like, we both left.
Nope. Either I was frozen or you were frozen, but one of us was frozen, and I just kept talking. So just in case. It's, you know, when you're in a place and they're like, oh, you have to say something into the microphone to test it. So just say something. So I start out and I just go and go and go. Like, tell me when to quit talking because I can talk forever.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. Hi, Nico.
Yes. Hi, Nico. Nice to see you. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. On TV, both the channels not much in the chat. That's okay. That's okay. Tonight's topic is infertility, and people would not necessarily think of that being an issue for a guy to really chime in, but a couple lives with the infertility. It's not just one, because the dad's trying just as hard to have that baby.
And
so
in my situation, I didn't want it to be my husband's issue, and he didn't want it to be my issue, but we both secretly blamed the other one, even though we would never have, admitted that or said that to each other. We were both trying, but it's, I guess it's human nature that you just really, you don't think it's you, you think it's the other person. So.
Well, we got everything tested. So let's start in with raise of hands here. How many people have lived with infertility? Both of us. Okay. So when was it that you got married. How long did you wait until you tried to have children?
We started trying immediately.
Oh, did you?
Yes, my husband
Okay.
had wanted to wait a couple of years, but something just told me that, we just needed not to prevent it, that we just needed to try. And so
Yes.
we tried and we tried, and um I had never had regular cycles.
Hmm.
So that was kind of an issue, but I didn't think it was a serious, issue.
Right. Yeah.
And I would go to the doctor and, they would tell me everything seemed to be okay. And, we can do
Yeah.
this and we can do that. And I'd be like, oh, no, 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 we'll wait, because I
Yeah.
had really a firm belief in God that if I was supposed to have a baby, I was going to have a baby. So
Okay.
I didn't want to do anything um, invasive or anything like that. I wanted it to happen naturally, and you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that could have actually prolonged my infertility
It
because
probably did.
yeah, sometimes you need to have medical intervention.
There are
But
times we did.
of course,
So,
this was
yeah.
a long time ago too. This is not
Mhm.
the way medicine is today.
Well,
They
your
know a
daughter's not
lot.
that much older than mine, is she?
I was 34 when I had my daughter, and she'll be 28.
Okay.
So this was in the mid
90s.
to late 80s when I first was trying to conceive.
Got it.
So,
Yes. Yes.
and I know a lot
Okay.
now about why I had the infertility and what contributed to it and all of that, but I did not know at the time.
Right.
And even when I was a young teenager, um, things were not, they didn't know about a lot of conditions that might cause infertility in your
Right.
later years. And so they didn't do testing. Now, like in my situation, I had my daughter tested, um, when she was starting to have her cycles, just to make sure that my situation wasn't something she would inherit and that we would have
Mm.
those same kind of issues with her. In other words, I didn't want her waiting around for 10
Yeah.
years to have a baby. When she wanted to have a baby, I wanted us to know everything was good to go. But
Absolutely.
now they can do testing, and there's different things that they know about now, whereas then they just it just really wasn't, you didn't even really talk about it. You just
Absolutely.
went
Yeah.
along
You
about it, and you know
said you don't want to blame, but at the same time, you're blaming, right? It's there. It's like,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
whose fault is it? Well, it's not a fault, but who's the cause of, well, but that's, it's unfair to both of you, right?
it
And I'm just
is.
going to point out, hello, chat. I love, if you have a question, put either capital Q's or all caps question. If you have a comment, all caps comment. And Indigo and Crystal will keep an eye and check and see what's going on. Um, but my focus is going to be almost exclusively on Echo. So if I miss your question, please forgive me. Echo, if I am missing a question and you see it, please interrupt, or when the moment is right, please bring it up,
Okay,
okay? If I
I
haven't.
will.
So, yeah. Okay. So, in my case, when I was a teenager, just something in my brain said, I am not going to be able to conceive easily. Didn't say I wasn't going to be able to have a baby. Just somewhere in my brain, it's like, this isn't going to be easy. And I was like, I remember being like 14 or 15 years old thinking that. This is well before I was ever even trying to have children or trying not to have children, depending on, the moment. Um, but yeah, that was a long time before that. So I don't
Well,
know. I think.
um,
Mhm,
I never thought it was going to be a problem. I really
mhm.
thought, I had my life mapped out pretty much.
Your
Um,
ducks in a row.
I had thought that I would be married by the time I was 25 and I would have
Mm-hmm.
2 kids by the time I was 30. That was my
Mm-hmm.
thinking. And I got
Mm-hmm.
married when I was 23. So I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I was ahead of the game. And
Yes.
I was 34 and turned 35 shortly after my daughter was born. So
Wow.
nothing worked out the way that I had it planned.
Well, yeah, we make plans and God laughs. That's the way it goes.
Yes.
Um, when we, yeah, when we got married, I was 23 and I wanted to start right away trying to have children. My husband is like, no, 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 just push on the brakes here a little bit. Let's be married for a little while because that's a big change. We had been dating for 5 years by that point, but it was still a big change, right? Like marriage is different than dating.
Mhm.
So he's like, no, I want to be married. In 2 years, we can start trying. So at 25, I started like we quit using any stopping like any prophylactic of any sort, and we weren't trying, but we were trying, and yeah, it just was not happening. Like yourself, I did not have regular cycles, and I don't even remember having regular cycles when I first started menstruating.
I
So
know I didn't. But then
yeah.
again, back then, it was not unusual. They would tell you, well, when you first
Hmm.
start having your cycle, it's not unusual for it to be irregular. And
Absolutely.
I kept waiting for it to get more regular. And of course, I wasn't sexually active. And so I didn't worry about when I was late or when I didn't have a cycle. I
Right.
didn't worry, oh, I'm pregnant. But I knew that they were not, in any way, shape, or form regular. I had
Right.
friends who, they could tell you what day they were going to start,
Oh
and they
yeah.
would,
Oh yeah.
and that was never
Absolutely.
me. And I didn't have bad premenstrual issues. I
Hmm.
never knew when it was coming or wasn't coming. It would just
Wow.
be a surprise when it did.
Just like,
Yeah.
oh
So I
wow.
didn't,
As my mom would say, there's Aunt Flo from Reading.
yeah. And it's like a lot
Yeah.
of people, they definitely knew their bodies, and they would know
Hmm.
when it was coming, and had, certain things happen beforehand, and all of that. And I never did. And
Right.
so after I got married and after we started trying, I did end up going on birth control pills
Mm.
simply because the doctor thought it would regulate my cycle. And
Hmm.
I really had an issue with trying to not have a baby. I didn't want to take that time and not, be able to have a baby.
Right.
However, I wanted to get the baby. So if it meant taking 6 months or a year of being on birth control, if that helped the situation, I was willing to do that. That was about the
That's
only
right.
thing I was willing to really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And of course, it never changed anything. Even on the pill, I was irregular. I never ever got regular. Um, and
Mm.
I would go months and months without having a cycle. And so after I was married and after we were trying, every time I would go a couple of months, I would think, maybe.
I know,
And
right?
so I would do the pregnancy test, and then and it would be negative, and the very next day I would start. And so then
Yeah.
it became like a curse. Like if you take the test, it
You're
will
going
be
to be
negative
negative.
and you will start. And so I said, I am never taking a test. I'll be having the baby and nobody will know I was pregnant, because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what happens when you say, I'm never going to do something? You
Then you will
always
never,
end up,
never, never before. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And you always
Oh
end
man.
up,
Yeah.
changing your mind on that. But
Absolutely.
with me, when I actually did kind of come to the realization that, maybe this wasn't going to ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only thing I ever wanted in my whole life. When I was a kid growing up, I never thought about my husband, my wedding, any of those kind of career, none of that. All I ever thought about was I'm going to be somebody's mommy. And
Mm.
that's what I wanted. And it was like the desire to be a mother was so strong. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until I finally, thought, well, I have faith in God and I believe
Mm-hmm.
that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and that if
Mm-hmm.
God wants me to, I will. And
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't until I finally said, okay, I can't live like this.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband made the joke, my ex-husband now, but he made the joke that when he'd go to a convenience store, he would look to see if anybody left a baby in a car because he was going to steal me a baby because he knew how
Mm.
bad, I wanted a baby. And I don't know if you
Yes,
remember, but
that's a
back then,
bad joke.
yeah, back then there was a
Yeah.
lady who was a foster parent
Yeah.
and had the little girl for several years. Anyway, they were giving the little girl back to the parents, and the lady took the girl and she ran because
Yep.
she felt like it was her
This is
baby.
my girl.
Right. And so, of course, that was, like, no, you cannot, first of all, steal a baby, of course. And second of all, I wanted to do foster care, but he wouldn't let me because he knew I would get attached. And then if they did have to go back into that situation or whatever, I wouldn't be able to handle it, which I wouldn't have. But that didn't
Right.
make me not want to, have kids in my life or whatever. But
Right.
anyway, I eventually, prayed that if it wasn't God's will for me to have a child, then I wanted him to take that desire away from me because I knew I
Mm.
could not go on and live my life, you know,
That's one of my
being,
favorite prayers. If this
yes,
is not your will for me, please change my mind.
yes, because it, it,
Absolutely.
it, it was such a strong desire. Hey, Mimi. Hello, everybody coming in. Lucy, I see you. I'm sorry. And my girls, Waffles, I saw you too. Um, but you know, I didn't think I could live like that, not being able to. So I
Right.
finally, after over 9 years of disappointments, I finally
Mm-hmm.
prayed that prayer, and it was around the holidays. We had nowhere to go
Mm-hmm.
for the holidays. We were supposed to have our own family. We did not
Yeah.
live near our families, and so we
Oh,
had no
wow.
family to celebrate the holidays with, and I got really, really depressed.
Yes,
I said,
absolutely.
I'm not celebrating the holidays this year. I'm not. I'm just not about that. And
Yeah.
I got
And
pregnant during the holidays. Although, of course, I did not know that
right.
because I was refusing to take a test.
Absolutely. NPC the game has a question for me.
Mhm.
My other's keeper, why do you think at such a young age you thought you could not have a baby? What influenced those thoughts? Family history, society, or irregular cycles? Thanks. Well, like I said, I had irregular cycles my whole life. Uh, but I don't think it was society. I think it was God preparing me. Um, at the time that I was thinking of it, my dad was a pastor. I was living a very good, happily Christian life. Later on, my parents would split up. My dad would get arrested for abusing my sister sexually. And then I decided that being good got me nowhere. So let's see what being bad could do. So I became quite sexually active for a
Mm.
number of years. So, and during those times of sexual activity, rarely, rarely was there protection in the house kind of thing. So it really was very, very difficult for me to get pregnant. But there were times that I was afraid I did get pregnant because my cycles were so irregular. And then months and months and months would go by. It's like, okay, maybe I should take a test. you never know. So yeah, there was that. And
Indigo asked a question about miscarriages.
yes,
Um,
yes.
I do not know that I ever had a miscarriage. I had several times when I passed a lot of large clots and things like that,
Hmm.
and bled very heavily. But I never went, and was told, okay, you've had a miscarriage. I didn't want to know. I didn't want
Right.
to know that I had been pregnant and lost the baby. And so I would never let myself go there or let myself think about any of that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I I know that I had a miscarriage once in the early 90s. I think it was about 1992. My husband and I had been together for 2 years at that point, and I had had the worst cramps of my life. Um, just it was awful. And then I woke up and in the morning, because I thought I was having period cramps, and I woke up in the morning and there was this piece of pink tissue wrapped around my tampon.
Mm,
And so I wasn't diagnosed with a miscarriage, but I know I miscarried.
yeah.
Um, and that hung heavily on my heart for many, many years. And then there was a song by Terry Clark, a country singer, called He Would Be 16.
Mm,
And it was a song about her losing a baby and saying, oh, just he would be 16, this boy I never knew.
mm,
And that's a tough song for me. Because even though it's been significantly more than 16 years, that song just touches such it just touches such a chord for me.
yeah.
And yeah, anyway.
And I think that's why I didn't want to know, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't want to add that to the mix. And then if I was never able to have a child, then I would have that to kind of haunt me,
right.
So I never wanted to know,
Well, and
whether
for me,
I did or I didn't.
once my husband and I actually started trying, like I said, we had been married at that point for 2 years. Um, and once we started trying, every time I had a period, every time, it was like in my mind having a miscarriage
Mm,
because nothing implanted, nothing
mhm,
implanted. And it was it was really terrible. It was really terrible. Um, for 2 years, it was just incredible. Um, After 2 years, we went to a gynecologist to help us out with fertility, and he gave us a medication called Clomid, and that fortunately caused me to have a, um, to ovulate. And after 3 months, I got pregnant. So fortunately, medical help was what I needed, and we were wise enough at that point to actually go try it. But until that point, it was it was like I said, every cycle was a miscarriage in my brain. I had to get to the point. This is in the mid 90s when news groups and stuff like that, AOL news groups and all of these things were really quite popular. So I was on
mhm,
these news groups with women talking about infertility. And after a while, like after a few months, these news groups, these women got so bitter. They were saying, "Oh, she doesn't deserve children." I was in the grocery store and she yelled at her child, and the child all they wanted was a certain kind of cereal, and mom said no. And then the mother suddenly yelling at her, "She doesn't deserve that child. I should take that child away." And I'm like, "Dude, you have no idea what is actually going on in that house." I still had some bearing of normalcy in my mind, but yeah, I had to get to that point, Indigo. I had to get to that point where I could honestly say I could see me not having kids. I had to, or I would have gone around the bend. I really
Yeah.
would have.
And
So
it's such a hard thing to
it
say
is.
because it makes you feel like such a failure as a woman
It
for one
does.
thing. And then when
Yes.
it's something that's all you've ever wanted to do, and then
Yeah.
you're not able to, it just really, um,
Mm-hmm.
and then too, I had, especially after I got married, I had friends that didn't want to have children get pregnant.
Yeah.
I had single friends,
Yep.
get pregnant. And, it would break my heart. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't
I know,
understand,
right?
why I can't do this,
Yeah.
and if I had known about the medical issues that I had that contributed to it, I know that I would have done anything then because I would have had a reason. I would have known this is the problem. If we do this and this, it'll fix that
Mm-hmm.
problem. But
Mm-hmm.
not knowing that there was a problem, it just seemed to me that, I couldn't really do anything because I was kind of like stuck, like this is my belief. This is what I want to have happen. Those two things should be completely compatible. I don't understand,
One would think.
why,
Yeah.
and it was almost like I was afraid to do anything for doing the wrong thing that would then make it where I definitely couldn't have any. So
Yeah.
I was just playing that waiting game, just like I'll just keep trying, I'll just keep waiting, I'll keep praying, it'll
And
happen.
you don't want to tick off God, right? By doing
Right,
the wrong thing.
exactly. And
Yeah,
and
you're
and it was kind of like,
yeah.
towards the end, my sister-in-law, she was like 40 when she got married, and they wanted to have kids. And so without her telling anyone in the family, they went and they did in vitro.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Mm-hmm.
got pregnant. They have a boy and a girl.
Yeah.
Now, it was like her parents totally did not understand
Nope.
taking those kind of measures, to have children. But
Yep.
having children came easy to them. And
Right.
this was a situation where she definitely felt like her time was running out. She needed to speed things up. And it
Yep.
wasn't until I went and I met those babies that I started wavering just a little bit that, maybe, you know,
Maybe
I
we should have a
need,
chat.
I
Yeah.
need some help. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what got me, thinking that maybe this just isn't what God wants for me in my life. And maybe I have to
Exactly.
let that go, you know.
Yep.
And
And that's where that prayer, the prayer that you're saying, God, if this is what I really want, and if you don't want this, take it away. I started praying that, strangely enough, walking on the way to school in the small town where I met Crystal. And it was while I was dating her brother that I learned to pray that. Like,
yeah.
God, if this is not what you want for me, take away my desire. And I had to pray that when my husband and I were trying to have babies. I got tested we both got tested for lots of different things.
Hmm.
Um, I had the type of test where, first of all, they did an internal ultrasound to make sure that the structure of the uterus was all correct. It was. I had a dye injected. It's called a histosalpingogram.
Hmm.
Don't ask me why I still remember
Yeah.
that.
That was one of the things they wanted to do. And I was like,
I
no, no, no.
no, all that does is it puts a dye into the uterus, and if it goes through the fallopian tubes unimpeded, then you're okay that way. So we did that. We tested that, and it was fine. They tested every which way to Sunday, and everything was working fine, but I wasn't ovulating. And that's where my doctor's like, okay, this is what's going on. And I'm like, okay, we are willing to go on medications, but we are not willing to do injectables. That's the line that we drew and said, we have to draw a line, or I'm going to become like those women on those news groups. And we're going to spend our entire everything we have ever owned and still maybe never have a baby out
Yeah.
of all of that. If
And,
that becomes your whole world, is that process, that's not getting pregnant. That's,
yeah,
yeah, it's just not good.
it definitely changes what you're thinking about before, during, and after, and
Mm-hmm.
it affects the way that you think of other people who do have children, or even people who may decide not to have children. How could they decide that? I mean, just so
Yeah.
many feelings are brought up because of that struggle of not being able to do it. And I now would say, do whatever is available to you. If you want to have a baby, and if there is a way for you to do that. I just finished reading a book, and in the book the lady had extremely bad fibroids,
Oh,
and
yeah.
she was dating a guy who really wanted to have a large family. And
Mm.
she struggled with even dating him because she knew with her situation, they'd already started talking, doing hysterectomy, and she was like early 20s. But it
Oh,
was so
wow.
severe and painful for
Yeah.
her that,
Yeah.
so anyway, um, she miraculously started, the fibroids started shrinking on their own. She stopped bleeding. She was able to
Wow.
conceive and actually had a child. Now, she was not able to have a second child, nor was I, but she at least did. Now, if that's not God intervening in that situation, I don't know what is. However, what had
Absolutely.
to happen is the husband, well, even before they got married, he had to convince her that even without being able to have children, he still wanted to be with her. And she had to
That's so
realize
important.
that, she wasn't depriving him of what he wanted, because that was the biggest issue. But he
Yep.
actually had 6 sisters, and his sisters all agreed to be surrogates for them if they needed that. So
Oh,
he went to his family, they prayed about it, they come up with what they could do, and then she finally, understood that he loved her enough that no matter what, that's what he wanted. And
yeah.
then God allowed them to have the baby. But to
Yeah.
me, those kind of miracles happen all the time. But we
They
don't
do.
look at it as it being a miracle. We look at it that,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
this intervened, or that, or what,
Or
but
they finally relaxed enough that she ovulated and then they were able to have a baby. I hate when people say that. Oh, if you just
yeah,
relax and quit trying, it'll happen.
yeah,
Happens all
no,
the time,
no,
right?
no, no. I, no,
Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all.
Oh
Um,
no. Yeah.
but my thing is that technology and medical advancements make it now that infertility should not be an issue, because there are so many things that can be done. But
Mm-hmm.
back when I was going through it, it just wasn't something you really, you know, you did. You either did what the doctor told you to do, or
Mm-hmm.
you suffered on your own. There wasn't anybody, like, there weren't like infertility support groups that I could get involved in or that I knew about. Nobody ever said, okay, this might make you become depressed.
Right.
Nobody ever
Yeah.
said, it was just kind of like, you're just left to your own thoughts and
Yeah.
feelings and struggle
Oh,
with,
yeah.
whatever you have to struggle with. So when
Yeah.
I had my daughter, I definitely knew it was a miracle,
Yeah.
and then when the doctor delivered her and saw the condition of my insides, they proclaimed, "This is a miracle child."
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I know that I only have her because God wanted me to have her.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
um, I tried for 5 years after I had her to have another one, even knowing all the issues that I found out when I had her. And it was impossible. And
Yeah.
so, that was the end of that. But, I was able to make that decision so much easier
Mm-hmm.
than any of the decisions before I had my daughter, because
Yeah.
I felt like, you got one miracle, don't be greedy, let's
Yes.
just, let's
Yes.
go ahead and be happy we have what we have,
That's
and
right. The
so
blind
that,
deaf girl, she can either get the miracle of sight or the miracle of hearing, not both. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I had our first daughter, when she was born, um, we were living across the country on the East Coast. And I moved there 7 months pregnant. And we did not have a family doctor when we got there.
Mm.
So we got there, and the only doctor willing to accept me as a patient was the local abortionist.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that fun?
Mm.
And then the week before my daughter was born, he retired. So I got a brand new, right straight out of medical school doctor. And I was his first woman to have a baby as a professional doctor. They said, "Oh, I've delivered dozens and dozens of babies." I'm like, "Yay, thanks."
Dozens. Mm. We want
Dozens.
somebody with a little more experience than that.
A little
Well,
bit.
um,
Yeah.
my daughter was breech, and
Ah.
um, I had the gestational diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, which
Mm-hmm.
then causes insulin resistance, which then leads to diabetes. So, of course, once I was pregnant, which I was untreated for the diabetes, but once I was pregnant,
Mm.
then I had the gestational diabetes. And when you have that, they tend to think the babies are going to be big
Oh
babies.
yeah. Yeah.
And so they pretty much want you to either be induced or have a cesarean, to deliver those babies early, before they get too big. And
Right.
so she was breech. They, thought she was going to be this huge baby. So I agreed to go in and have a C-section. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the day I was supposed to do that, they did an x-ray prior to the C-section, and she had turned and was no longer breech. And they said, "Okay, we are going to induce you." They induced us for 3 days. She
3 days.
turned sideways
She
and,
re-breached herself.
yeah, and wasn't coming
Yeah.
out. They manually tried to turn her unsuccessfully. So after 3 days of extreme painful labor, I did
Oh
have an
yeah.
emergency C-section to have her.
Yeah.
Now, looking back at it, I feel like God knew this was my one and only time.
Yep.
And he allowed me to experience everything
Every little bit of the pain.
that I
Thanks,
could
Eve.
experience. I really think he wanted me to realize, when you get what you ask for,
Be careful
there are
what you wish for.
consequences. It's
That's
not all
right.
going to be a bed of roses.
No.
So
No.
it was a very trying experience after such a
For
long
sure.
time of waiting. But it was the most beautiful thing in the world. and to see my
Mhm.
husband
Mhm.
be able to hold his baby. And he's a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. He wore a dress shirt and a tie the day of my C-section because he said he wanted to look good for his daughter. So, you know, um,
Oh, Echo.
and that's why when we did end up getting divorced, why it was so easy for me to make this blended family because I know how much he loved his child, and I know
Yeah,
even though he
yeah.
didn't go through all of the issues that I went through, he had to put up with me while I was going through all,
Going through them.
you know. So he
Yeah,
he paid his dues as far as that goes too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and she deserved to have both parents, in
For
her life.
sure.
And
Absolutely.
especially after all that we went through, trying to get her and get her here, it was
Mhm.
definitely gonna she was gonna be spoiled rotten and know how special she was and how important it was to us and all of that. And now that she's given us a granddaughter, it's just amazing the how I
Mhm.
thought I loved her more than I could ever love anybody. And
Yep.
then I put the granddaughter there and it's like my heart just doubled, to where I
Yes.
haven't lost any love for my daughter, but
No.
I've grown so much for my granddaughter. And now my daughter can understand what I went through
Yeah.
um, to get her and how special she was and is. And now she understands, the how way she feels about her daughter. She told me that,
Yeah.
she knew I loved her, but she never really knew that kind of love until
Mhm.
she had her own child. And I said,
Yeah.
if you don't believe there's a God,
Mhm.
witness the miracle of birth, of life. If you don't believe after something like that, you'll never believe. You're just
That's
not the
right.
kind of
Yeah.
person that's going to believe because it's just so amazing the way everything, falls into place
Did
and
she
works
have a
out.
hard time conceiving as well?
She tried, she did not have irregular periods and she did
Mm.
not have the polycystic um,
Oh.
either. They did try for a couple of years before she did conceive, and it's been 3 years, a little over 3 years now, and they've not had a second child. However,
Mm.
she is a very emotional kind of
Mm.
person when things are not going well. um it's like she shuts down, her body like shuts down, like during the big C, for
Oh, yeah, yeah.
um
Yep.
and that was prior to them having their daughter, and so that kind of delayed, I think, somewhat. She didn't have any pregnancy issues. Once she was pregnant, she didn't have a bit of trouble. She never once had morning
Wonderful.
sickness. She never got
Oh,
sick. She did have to have a cesarean. Um, Part of my issue, she did have, as far as her cervix didn't open up right. And, they did everything, all the medical stuff they could do to try to make
mhm,
that happen. And the doctor finally
mhm.
said, you know, let's get that
Yeah,
baby here, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah.
luckily, since I had the cesarean, I knew how to help her with that. I didn't know how to help her going natural because I didn't get to do it all the way natural.
Right,
So I was
right.
like, if worse comes to worse and you have to have the cesarean, don't worry about it because I can help you with that. And I had already talked to her doctor, and the doctor was kind of like, not everything that happened to you is going to happen to her. And I said, no,
Right.
no, no, I understand, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from as her mom, that I don't want her to be, because I asked him, I said, if it's not progressing, how long are you waiting? Because they waited 3 days with
Yes,
me, which was 3 days to the
yes.
month. So
Yeah,
I wanted to have that up front. How long are
yep.
we going to play around before we actually take it and do what we have to do. And he said, look, I want a healthy baby and a healthy mama. He said, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to play games. He said, if I feel
Good.
like it's not working, we're going to get that baby here. And so he
Yep.
actually, and because this was right after the big C, they had had a fresh outbreak at that hospital. And he was the director of the OB, and he
Okay.
closed it. He said, one person can come in and that's
Yeah,
it. And once you come in, you stay the entire time. So, of course, her husband got to go with her.
for
So here are
sure.
these two 20 somethings, never had surgery, either one of them, never really had a major
Oh my
illness.
word.
They
Okay,
really didn't know what they were getting into or what was going to happen.
for
So,
sure.
of course, Mama, I was going to be there. I was going to handle this situation. And then I got told, no, I cannot even come to the hospital.
You mentioned the whole
So,
laughter from God part.
yeah. And so here I am at home, and for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, their self service up there wasn't good. And we couldn't get a lot of phone or texts through and pictures and all that. But my son-in-law, bless his heart, he kept trying. And I did get a couple of pictures after the baby was there. And I did get to talk to my daughter. The one time she called when the doctor was there and he was telling them that it was time to do the cesarean, she started to
Yeah.
freak out. She was like, let me call my mama. And so I got on the phone and I talked to the doctor
Oh,
and I talked to her,
okay.
and, I explained to her, look, this is the time we talked about happening. You've got to do this and it's not going to be
Yep.
that bad. Just, you want that baby to be here and be healthy. You got to go and do what they tell you to do. And she did,
Mm-hmm.
and she did beautifully. But the doctor was like, Mama, we got this. And I'm like, I understand, but I don't think you understand how hard it is for me not to physically be in
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah.
And then the nursery, for some reason, did not, like, they wouldn't take the baby at night. And so neither one of them got any sleep at all. And they were there for 3 days and
Yeah.
they were exhausted and, felt like horrible parents because they didn't know how to soothe their child. And so when I went to go pick them up from the hospital, my daughter she was in a state. I'm telling you, she was beside herself. And I had set the car seat up and I had
Mm-hmm.
neglected to show her how you tighten or loosen the strap for the
Whoops.
seatbelt.
Mm-hmm.
They would not let them leave the hospital until that baby was secure in that car seat. And
Yeah.
neither one of
Yeah.
them could figure it out. And so I'm on the phone down in the
They wouldn't
park.
help?
They just acted like you're supposed to know how to use your car seat. So I'm like
Oh my
trying to
word.
explain it to her and trying to explain to her, and she's getting short with me on the phone and like, I
Well,
don't
yeah.
know what you're talking about. And I'm like, take the cover off the bottom of the seat. Now look, you'll see a button, a little silver push. You push. So they finally got it. So by the time they actually got out to the car, she was in tears.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, honey, it's okay.
There's a
It's
hormone or
okay.
two running through there too. I mean, come on now.
So we get in the car, and the whole time I'm thinking, okay, I'm staying the night with them. I'm going
Mm.
to try to convince them to take a nap, let me have the baby, you know. Um, and I'm thinking, okay, they're not going to want to. They were so exhausted. When we were in the car driving home, my son-in-law said, are you going to take us home before you go get the medicine? Because they had sent prescriptions for her. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take y'all home, get y'all settled at home, and then I'll go, get the medicine. So I did. Well, she calls me before I leave the drugstore, like in so much pain, wanting her prescription. And I'm like,
Oh
I'm coming
yeah.
right now. I gave her the
Yeah.
prescription. I told them, you both need to go lay down because you're exhausted. They were like, see ya. They went and laid down. I got to have the baby. They didn't get up until early the next morning. This was like 6 o'clock in the evening. They did not wake up until the next morning.
Please tell me she was being bottle fed.
Yes, yes,
Oh, good.
yes. Um, but
Yeah.
they were just, they were just totally exhausted. And so I said, okay, do you want me to stay? And I will be the night nurse. I will take care of this baby at night and let y'all sleep. Of
Nice.
course, my son-in-law was working. She was out of
Right.
school, so it was okay for her. But still, I knew what it was like when I was a young mother and I got overly tired and I didn't have anybody to leave my baby with, you know. So
Right.
it was hard. And so I said, you know, let me do this for you. I will take care of the baby at night. You can sleep. I'll sleep in the daytime. You watch the baby, you know. And so I ended up staying the first 6 weeks.
Yep.
And she was supposed to go back to work after 8 weeks. And so at 6 weeks, I said, I think y'all have got this. I'm going to go on home. You know, y'all can get it. My son-in-law was like, you're leaving? Really? And I'm
Do
like,
you?
well, you know, don't y'all want some time, just you and the baby? And, you know, no, we need
Oh,
you. And I was cooking, you know, so it was like, you know, I was doing their laundry. I was, you know, they were like,
oh, so you
no,
were the
you,
wife.
yeah. So they
Got
were
it.
like, no, you don't need to leave. So I ended up staying the whole 6 week or 8 weeks. And then when she went back to work, then she would bring me the baby every day while she went to school. And
Mm.
so I definitely, you know, those 3 days I missed, that was nothing. You know, I made up for it after that. But I tell
Okay, I
you,
have to highlight this one.
yeah.
Super Echo to the rescue.
And I'm like that for my granddaughter too. My granddaughter believes I can fix anything with batteries because I keep batteries in a Ziploc bag with two different little screwdrivers for all of her toys.
Awesome.
And so when
Oh,
her
yeah.
toys stop working at home, she sets them for me to pick them up and bring them home and fix them because she knows Granny can fix it. Because Granny has batteries and Mommy is like not going to buy batteries, you know. So, and
Oh,
my
man.
granddaughter is just slightly spoiled as far as, you know, Granny gives her what she wants. And
Mm.
so, you know, she'll tell her mom and her dad, you know, Granny will. Granny said I could, or, you know, whatever. And they're
Yeah,
like, it doesn't matter. Granny's not here, you know.
that's
We're
right.
watching you now. You have to do what we say.
Yeah, yeah. No, when I had our older daughter, um, like I said, there was a really rough time getting a doctor. And then when we finally got a doctor, we got this brand new guy. I was in the middle of labor, and he went home a half an hour drive away to have sleep overnight while I was in labor. He was the only labor and delivery doctor in the hospital. Why would he do this? So meanwhile, me and the nurses, we're there and they're like, push, push. And she got stuck.
Um,
My precious baby child got stuck. She had a giant hickey on top of her head because I was pushing so hard
mm-hmm.
that had she not had a giant melon, she would have gotten born no problem. But her head was 95th percentile. Her body was 25th percentile.
Oh my
The child
goodness.
was nothing but head.
Yeah.
So, like, really narrow, but long front to back. Long front to back. Um, so she did look like a typical, very petite child, but yeah, it was the front to back that was difficult. So he got to the hospital. Oh, I was so mad. I was
Mhm.
so mad. My mom was there. We're from Saskatchewan. My husband and I had moved to New Brunswick at that time, and so my mom had flown out about a week before she was due, and we ended up all at the hospital and whatever. And mom was videotaping and all of the wonderful things. And then as soon as he's like, okay, we're going to take a look at forceps, she turned off the video. And well, no, that she's like, I have seen forceps deliveries. They can be scary looking. I
Yeah.
don't want that to be your memory.
Yeah.
They decided against the forceps because her head was stuck and they couldn't get the forceps around.
Mm.
So I ended up getting an emergency C-section
Mm.
and just, yeah. it was interesting. So she came out. I wanted to watch the surgery. Just saying, I wanted to watch. Uh, but she came out. They showed my husband. They let me, touch her face and all the little mummy things. And then they took her out to the hallway, and my mom saw her, and they're like, "Grandma, do you want to hold the baby?" She's like, "Has Kim held the baby? Has Kim seen the baby?" Yes, she has. Okay, then I will. She didn't
Mhm.
want to be the first one to be able to hold the baby. I am so grateful for that. So
Yeah.
grateful for that. And then, she was in the NICU because in the stress of not being able to get her head go, she inhaled the meconium, the waste
Mhm.
product that
Mhm.
babies release, and
Mhm.
so they had to get her into the NICU and take care of that. Um, but like the next day, I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm nursing my child. You are not feeding her formula. I mean, formula is lovely, don't get me wrong, but I am going to nurse this baby.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they didn't have a lactational counselor at the hospital that day. So I ended up with bruises and blisters. It was probably not the best time to try. So
Now,
yeah,
I
that
was
was
I
that
was
was
very
interesting.
adamant that I was going to breastfeed as well.
Yeah.
And she, because of the diabetes and the stress and everything, my blood sugar bottomed out right before I had her. And
Oh
so her blood
no.
sugar had bottomed out as well. And so
Yeah.
one of the first things we had to do was to give her a bottle of some sugar water. I
Yes.
was
Yep.
not wanting her to have the bottle. I did not want her to have the rubber nipple. I was just, and the doctor was like, it's either this or we give her an IV. Do you want us to stick her with a needle or do you want to give her this sugar water? And I was like, oh, well, in that case, I'll give her the water, maybe one bottle won't hurt. And so
Yeah.
I did the breastfeeding thing. However, my child did not gain any weight. She actually lost weight before we left the hospital. And then over the next 3 weeks, she did not gain any weight. She did not lose any more weight, but she did not gain any weight.
Hmm.
And I was having a lot of gallbladder issues, which I didn't even know.
Mm,
And
right.
ended up when she was 10 days old, I had a stone stuck in the duct. And so I had to be in the hospital overnight, and they went down through my throat, got the stone out, and did like a nuclear medicine test. And so I could not breastfeed her during that time period. So my
Yep.
husband fed her formula. And
Hmm.
then when she was 3 weeks old, I had to have my gallbladder taken out. So I had
Mm,
anesthetic. So again, there was a period of a few days that I could
yeah.
not breastfeed her. And
Right.
so when I could start breastfeeding her again, she was drinking a whole bottle, breastfeeding, and still not gaining weight. And the doctor said, you've tried. We got to feed this baby. And I was like, most definitely, we got to feed her. And so I quit trying to breastfeed and we strictly went to formula. And then she started gaining weight and then she did fine. But I don't know if it was because of the gallbladder issues that my milk just wasn't doing it for her, or when you're
That wouldn't
breastfeeding too, you
surprise
don't
me.
always know how much they're actually getting. And maybe she just wasn't getting enough, I don't know. But anyway, I was happy to be able to put her on formula,
Yeah.
um, and get her to start gaining
Yeah.
weight.
When it's a matter of your child's survival, it's amazing what you'll do, right?
Yes,
The
yes,
corners you'll cut, or um the word has escaped me. It is an inaccurate word, which is why the air quotes, concessions that you'll make to the reality.
yeah.
Like you will do what needs to happen, you know?
Well, and
Um,
when they actually came in and said, okay, we have to do this emergency C-section, and they started getting me ready, I was so upset because to me, my baby's in danger, because now you're saying it's an emergency. I've been laying here for
Yeah.
3 days, but now it's
I
an
know.
emergency. And so
Yeah.
I'm getting all upset and everything. And I'm saying, look, I want everybody's name. I'm going to sue everybody, and all this. And this one little nurse, she came over to me and she was like, ma'am, you're actually cutting off oxygen to your baby by getting so upset yourself. So I need you to lay back. Let us get you ready and get that baby here, And it was like, as soon as she said I was hurting my own baby, I was like, okay, shh, shh. I'll do whatever you say.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. And so the poor anesthesiologist, he could just tell by the look on my face that I didn't know what was going on. And they gave me medication to where I knew what they were doing, but I didn't really care. I just wanted to see my baby. And so here I got
Yes.
my husband over my shoulder, and he's looking, watching, and he's asking
Yeah.
questions. And I'm like, don't talk about stuff. And so the anesthesiologist is patting me on the shoulder. Mama, it's okay. She's pink. She's wiggling, because she didn't cry at first. And,
No.
he's like trying to, calm me down. And then they put the little hat on her, wrapped her in the blanket, kind of like, real quick, let me see her and go.
Yep.
And so
That's essentially what happened. Yep.
I only saw this much of
Oh.
her. And then I'm in recovery, and I want my baby in recovery. And they're like, no, you don't get her until you get out of recovery. And you have to be able to move your legs before you
Yes.
can get out of recovery, because I
Yep.
had the spinal. So I'm
Yep.
over there and I'm like, check out my legs. I'm moving my legs. And they're like, we don't see
No, you're
it.
not.
And they're like, I'm like, move the blanket, move the sheet and the blanket. Let me show you. I can move my legs. It's like my big toe would twitch, and I felt like I was throwing my legs up.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yes.
I want to get my baby. So
Yep.
finally, by the time all that's over and done with, I'm finally now back in my room. I'm supposed to be able to see the baby. And I had told my husband, do not worry about me. You stay with that baby, because then I had the fear my baby was going to get switched at the hospital, and I was going to bring somebody
Ooh.
else's baby home. So
Yep.
I wanted my husband to stay with that baby the whole way through. I don't care if you got to stand outside that door. You make sure my baby is my baby.
Yep.
So I wake up in
Yeah.
my room, and here's my husband, and I'm like, where's the baby? Well, they've got her there doing a hearing test on her. I said, and so why are you in here? You need to be watching my baby,
You need a hearing test because you didn't listen to me.
Yeah. And he's like, well, they said they were going to give her a bath, and then they're going to give her the hearing test. And I'm like, and that's long enough for somebody to kidnap her. You have to go and find my baby. So, of course, he's like, oh, brother. And so he goes out there and he, asks, my hysterical wife in here would like her baby. So they finally bring me the baby. I'm in the bed holding the baby, and I'm still heavily medicated, and I
Yes.
passed out. And my husband had to catch the baby because my arms just let go. So
Oh, wow.
he would let me hold her until I would start to doze off, and then he would get her. And then I would
Yeah.
wake up and he would be holding her. And I would be
Yeah.
like, give me my baby. I don't understand why you won't let me hold the baby. And he's like, because you're dangerous. You're trying to drop her. And I'm like,
You're
why would I
endangering her
drop my
life.
own child?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are pictures of him sitting on the edge of the bed with his arms under my arms and me passed out with the baby. Like, I want to hold her even if I'm going to sleep. I
Yes,
still
that's
want to
right.
be
I'm
holding.
sleeping and I want to be holding my baby.
Yes.
Yes,
And it's like,
absolutely.
and don't make me not be able to, hold
Yes.
her.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, my older ended up in NICU, like I said, and by the time I'm like, okay, I'm the one who's going to feed her, and they're like, hey, you feed her. She's back up into your room. We aren't taking care of her anymore. I'm like, as long as she's medically okay, I'm fine with that, and that's what happened. And yeah, so we were there. It was a terrible experience. The whole hospital experience. The nurses I was 27 years old, had been married for a number of years, and would talk to my mom instead of me, like I was some 16-year-old unwed delinquent, you
Mm.
know. But so they would talk to my mom, and then mom would have to translate for me. Anyway, my mom and I basically just humored the nurses, but I mean, yeah. So that whole experience was just not pleasant. But my mom was able to stick around for 3 weeks, and then she had to fly home. But yeah, it was just, we did a whole pile of traveling. Took her around a lot of the Maritimes while the baby was so little, and there was little old ladies looking at me with this brand new infant, so obviously brand new, and just, and my
Mhm.
mom's like, Kim, don't pay attention to them.
Mm-mm.
You are doing nothing wrong whatsoever having this baby outside. It's not hurting her at all. Like,
Yeah.
okay, good. you know. So my wonderful comfort when it came to dealing with other people's expectations and dealing with my own and all of that stuff. So that was great. But when it came, like, let's rewind just a few months, I really did have morning sickness quite badly.
Mm.
And
So did I.
when I was on birth control pills, I was very sick. And the doctor's like, yep, you're definitely gonna have morning sickness when you get pregnant, because these are the same hormones that's going on. So I was very sick. And then now forward a few months till my daughter is 5 months old, and suddenly I'm feeling sick again, and I'm like, oh no. I went to my doctor in this little New Brunswick town, and I said, "Oh, I need a prescription for Declectin." He's like, "Declectin? No, we only give that to women who are pregnant. Declectin is like Dramamine, but for pregnant women."
Oh, okay.
And he's like, "No, we only give that to pregnant women." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. My older child was only 5 months old when this happened." So
Mm.
all of the hard time that we had getting pregnant with baby one, the only time it possibly ever could have happened, the one time it could have happened, it happened, and we got baby number two. Did I
Mhm.
mention God laughing at
Yep.
us a
Exactly.
lot?
Yep.
And
That's why I say be careful what you ask for because there are consequences.
yep,
And we don't think that far. I said to somebody the other day, we can't see around corners and we can't
no,
see into the future the way that God can. And so
uh-huh,
sometimes, he does certain things because he knows what's coming. We don't. And we don't understand why he does those things because we're not able to see that. And
absolutely.
as far as the morning sickness goes, um, hi, Nancy Green. I did not know I was pregnant. I was not going to take a test.
Oh,
This is before we had cell phones, and I
mm-hmm.
lived about a 30-minute drive from my job. And I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden, I start throwing up in my car, and I cannot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I'm really sick. So I turn around and I drive back home. I call my boss. I let him
Mm-hmm.
know I've got the flu. I am terribly ill. I cannot make it.
Absolutely. Yep.
He said, okay, do what you got to do. The next morning, I got up. I felt better. I thought, okay, no problem. Get in the car, start driving to work. Same thing. About halfway there, I'm thinking, okay, I've become car sick. And I've never been car
For the
sick in
first
my
time in
life.
my life.
2 days in a row, same point in the road and everything, I'm car sick.
Yep.
Go back home again, call my boss. Well, I thought I was better, but I'm not any better. I need to stay home today too. The third day, I fell down my trailer steps going out the door.
Oh no.
Now, I passed out is what I did. My husband said I fell, but I was opening the door and then I was on the ground. So I
Oh,
don't think
echo.
I fell. I think I actually passed out.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, whatever's wrong with me, this is a serious illness. I have
Yeah.
got to go to the doctor because,
Yeah.
something's wrong. I go to
Yeah.
the doctor. The doctor says, any possibility you could be pregnant? I'm like, yeah, okay. Listen, I've been dealing with infertility for almost 9 years.
Hmm.
Well, when was your last cycle? I don't know. I don't have a clue. He's like, you don't keep track? Why would I keep track when maybe there's 2 or 3 in a year? I don't know. I have no clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he says, well, in that case, first thing we're going to do is do a pregnancy test. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I know what's going to happen. It's going to be negative. I'm going to start tomorrow. No big deal.
That's right. Now that you've done it, I'm gonna have a cycle.
Yeah.
It's
So,
your fault. Yeah.
give me something for this flu that I have or whatever and let me
Hmm.
go. So they do the lab work, and the lab tech is doing her thing over there, and she says to me, well, would you want to be pregnant? And I said, look, at this point, I would be thrilled if I was pregnant, but I'm not going to let it bother me if I'm not. So, either
Hmm.
way, I'm okay. And
Hmm.
she said, well, this says you're pregnant. The test is positive. And I said, no, can't be. She said, you're going to need to call your husband and have him bring a videotape because we're going to have to do an ultrasound to find out how far along you are. I'm like, okay,
Oh.
this is a joke, right? So I called my husband. He's like, before I say anything, he's like, you're pregnant. And I said, well, that's what they say. He's like, yeah. He said, while you were at the doctor, I put 2 and 2 together. You must be pregnant. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I am. And I'm like, you need to bring a videotape and come up here because they want to do an ultrasound and we may be seeing this baby. Still, we're both thinking it's going to be a little blob on the screen.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I was 17 weeks pregnant. She was fully developed. She had fingers and toes and the whole 9 yards. And she's in there going,
Everything.
moving all around.
Yoo-hoo. How
And they're
could you
like, you
not have
can't feel
felt
that?
her?
And I'm like, I cannot feel it. I can't feel anything because, I didn't know I was pregnant.
Right.
I probably felt it, didn't know that's what I was feeling, you
Feeling
know.
gas bubbles.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So now I'm freaked out because now I've had no prenatal care
Yeah.
at all. I was a smoker, but right before December,
Hmm.
um, the 5th of December, I was in the hospital with pneumonia. And the doctor said to me, you've had your
Oh
last cigarette.
no.
Your lungs
Oh
are in bad
wow.
shape and you are not going to be able to smoke. And I was like, okay, that's great. Because my one thing about smoking was I had always said, if I ever got pregnant, I would quit. So
Hmm.
I needed to quit before I got pregnant. Of course, God knew this already. So God already had this all figured out. So
Yep.
I quit smoking. I get over the pneumonia and I didn't have a desire to smoke. And I was like, great, I'm not a smoker anymore. Then I got pregnant. So the whole time I was pregnant, I didn't smoke because I
Oh,
didn't know, I was a
yeah.
non-smoker now. So
Yeah.
there was nothing wrong with her. Everything was perfect. Of
Hmm.
course, I had the gestational diabetes. They found out about that.
Yeah.
They did a bunch of lab tests. They found out I had a hypothyroidism where my thyroid didn't work properly. Found
Okay.
out I had the PCOS. Found out that I
Yep.
was diabetic. All of this,
Basically, you're a mess.
yeah. And here I am
Yeah.
almost, I'm 34 and I hadn't really gone to doctors because I didn't want to intervene,
Yeah. You didn't want to
medically.
mess it up.
So I
Yeah.
just thought I was perfectly fine. I did not know all of this was going on.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was, I always tell my daughter, I was perfectly healthy until I had you. And then everything went downhill.
Yep.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
wow.
But yeah, I'm
No.
very, very blessed that she was
Yes.
perfect, because
Yeah.
going that long without, prenatal care,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have
Well,
been the.
when we were trying to get pregnant, while we were on the medications, my husband's brother and his wife had 4 boys. And with each of those 4 boys, no, like their 4 boys were already born by the time he and I started dating. So, but they had each of their 4 boys natural planning. So
Mm,
they used temperature and they checked, uh, okay, trigger warning down here. Yeah, they checked vaginal mucus to check and see like how the body changes and all the
mm,
biological stuff. And so she taught me how to do that. And she's like, you will know the day that you ovulate. You will know that you are pregnant because you'll see this, and this, and then suddenly you won't see that anymore. So
mm.
she taught me all of the biology behind all of that. So I know the date my daughter was conceived both times, but I also knew that my first one was going to be a daughter because when we tried to get pregnant that particular month, my husband and I had just been at each other. It was just like we weren't talking to each other. It's like, but we're getting pregnant, so we're doing it right now. So yay.
I'm
And
only laughing because I've had that same conversation. It's
you
like, I
got
know
this.
right
I
here,
know. I know.
right now.
Yep. We're doing it. So,
Yeah.
and then we
Mm.
had to do it because he was flying off to Japan for a business meeting. Well, I ovulated after he arrived in Japan. So sperm will live inside you up to
Mhm.
5 to 7 days, right?
Yep,
But the
yep.
boy sperm, they swim really, really fast.
Mhm.
Okay. And they will get to an egg really quickly if you've already ovulated when you have sex. If you have not yet ovulated, like if it's kind of in the middle, a day or two after, then it's about equal chance, boy or girl. But if you ovulate like 4 or 5 days later, which I did, 90 something percent chance you'll have a girl because the females swim slower and they live
Lord.
longer.
Mm.
So I was certain from the get-go that I was having a girl, and I was right. Um, and it just is, yeah. The second one I was convinced was going to be a boy just because I had convinced myself it was going to be a boy, and it wasn't. It was a girl. Um, but like I was undiagnosed with my mental illness. And I really, 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 really wish that I had been diagnosed because I was so stressed that I remember so little of their infancies, both of my girls. They're only 14 months apart. And I
Mm.
remember so little of their infancies. And that is one thing that I regret, but I had no control over. Right. So I was really stressed that they were so close together. But then again, had this plan because as they were growing up, we would do things and they would be at essentially the same developmental age. They would have similar enough interests. We could go to particular vacation destinations and not worry about a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Right.
Like how do you entertain that, right?
Mhm.
So we had 2 little girls that generally got along well. Um, and they were able to do the same kinds of things. Like a little girl wants to play with a horse, a little girl gets to play with a horse, her sister gets to play with a horse. It's all
Yeah.
good. So we were just, God took such care of us when it finally happened that we were to have children. Just incredible. And each time, each time my girls were born, because we know the date each one of them was conceived, they were each born on their due date.
Wow.
There was none of this, oh, it could be within this 2-week period, because
Right.
there's the period
Right.
between when you have your period and when you find out you're pregnant, right?
Right.
We didn't have that. We knew the day that it happened. And so both times, each time it was within 24 hours of their due date. So I say within 24 hours. So like July 30th, and she was born August 1st at 4 a.m. So she was born on her due date,
Due date. Yeah. Well,
right?
see, with
And
with
then the
us,
next
we
one,
we didn't really know, to figure out
for
a due
sure.
date. And so when they did the ultrasound, they measured her bones and came up with
Mm-hmm.
17-week age.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
we went with that. And then because of the gestational diabetes, they ended up taking her earlier. So her actual birthday should have maybe been a week or so later, you
That's
know,
not bad.
but it's okay.
Yeah,
It worked out just the way God wanted it to work out. So,
exactly. Yeah.
you can't begrudge that you
No,
went through what you went through. But now with
for
me, I
sure.
had taken a job, and the only requirement the guy had was
Mm-hmm.
that I would be able to work there long term. He didn't want to be changing people. And I said,
Yeah.
well, I've been trying for over 9 years to have a baby, and I don't see that happening. So I'm going to work. So when I
Which
had to
is
tell,
illegal to say to
yeah,
somebody. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
but so when I had to tell my boss that, guess what? I don't have a life-threatening disease.
No, you have the Egyptian flu.
I'm expecting a baby. And he was like, what? I'm like, oh, you think
You
we're
promised.
surprised? We're very
Yeah.
surprised. So I told him, well, I have, so many months, and, you're going to need to hire somebody, and I'll stay on and train them. But I'll be leaving, when I have this baby, because that was my other thing, is that when I became a mother, I was going to be a
Right.
stay-at-home mother. So
Mm-hmm.
no matter how much I liked the guy or the job or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I would be home with my baby. And so
Right.
his response was, "We'll work something out." And I said, "Okay, well, you work it out, because I know what I'm doing." So days got closer and closer, and he still hadn't hired anybody. And I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to stay home with my baby. I told you that." And he
Yeah.
said, "Well, but why do you want to stay home with her? Because you don't want to put her in daycare." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm not putting my baby in daycare. Of course not.
Right.
But it's awful. You can't really work and have an infant at home. It's kind of hard." And he said, "Well, what if you could bring her with you to the office?" Which, it was a one-man office. I was there by myself 90% of the time. But he said, "What if you brought her with you, and you could bring in, whatever baby equipment you needed or whatever, we'll set up a nursery for her. And what would you do then? Would you consider it?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I probably would consider it, but you don't want to do all that, you know." He ended up becoming her godfather, because
Oh.
he fell in love with that baby girl.
Oh
And
yeah.
she stayed in the office with me until she was 18 months old. And I
Mm.
ended up putting her in daycare only because she needed to be with other kids. And
Yep.
it was harder on him, her not being there, than it
Oh.
was on me. And he would
Oh,
call
for
me and say,
sure.
"Have you gone and checked on her today? Don't you think you should get off early today and get her and bring her by, and stuff like that?" So he made it very easy for me to work and have.
Oh, nice.
So,
See, I was a hairdresser when I had my babies, and doing that and having a baby at a salon would not have been possible.
well, I didn't think it was going to be possible either. But
Yeah. What
it,
type of work
I
were you
mean,
doing?
I was like a secretary, bookkeeper kind of thing.
Okay.
And I was in this office by myself most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, once in a while, he would have meetings and have people there, but most of the time, I did everything on the phone and on the computer. I didn't really have to,
Yeah.
deal with people
Nice.
until she was older, and then I started doing more like property management stuff for him,
Mm.
which that
Mhm.
would have been difficult.
Yeah.
But he just really didn't want to have to get somebody else. And he was racking his brain trying to figure out how he could work it out and what he could do to make me want to stay.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, well, what are we going to do if, she's screaming and, we have to be on the phone or, somebody's here or whatever. But all the construction guys, because he did a lot of new construction, all of them fell in love with her. They would come in just to see the baby. And I mean, it was a really good experience. I really had it made when it came to that with
No
her there.
doubt.
Hey, Art.
No
But
doubt.
yeah, I mean, God worked that out for me too. He knew I didn't want to leave her,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
and I had
In
no
Canada,
idea that I could work with her there.
right. In Canada, when I had our first daughter, it was 1999, and it was at that point, a mom could be off work for 6 months, and then a dad could take 6 months, or the mom could take the full year.
Mm,
So I was able to be at home for a full year, paid medical leave, due to our government. And just that's kind of the way it is in Canada still. If somebody adopts, you get even more time simply
wow.
because you get preparation time for the child to arrive. And then you have to have bonding time with the baby or
Hmm.
with the toddler or with whomever. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how old the child is you adopt, you get time off because you're adopting and you need time to bond with that child. I love that our government recognizes that,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful thing. It is absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Because and I wasn't going to work, you know, if whenever it happened, I had already decided, I was not
Mhm.
going to work. I was going to stay home with my baby. And God worked that
I
out,
wanted
you
to as well. I wanted to as well.
know, you know.
Unfortunately, because I was a hairdresser, I was so used to having constant adult conversation, contact, yada, yada, yada.
Hmm.
I was not a good mommy because I was undiagnosed with a mental illness, and I was used to having all of this creative time, all of this time with people, all of this stuff. So I ended up going to work when our youngest daughter was just over a year old. Yeah. I worked at my husband's company for a little while when our younger daughter was about a year old, and we I worked there until I went to Bible school 2.5 years later.
Hmm.
And then I had these preschoolers. I still wasn't at home all day, but I was at Bible school. So, God took care of it. And teenagers are flakes when it comes to babysitting on a regular basis. Just saying. Just from my experience. Yeah. Anyway. So, did either of you show signs of postpartum depression? That's an excellent question, Indigo. Um, because I had bipolar disorder, I did not show signs of postpartum depression, but um, I was stressed. Just in general, I was stressed, which is happens when you've got two children that can't walk and both need diapers changed and so on and so
Hmm.
forth. But when my younger daughter was about 11 months old, I developed a really deep depression. And I knew where that kind of depression had taken me in the past, and it had taken me into um, thoughts and activities of self destruction.
Hmm.
And I knew that was not okay. So I went to a counselor, and the counselor and my doctor kind of went through everything. And the doctor um, said, no, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. And my psychologist said, you do have this, you do have this. He gave us a 300 question form for my husband and myself to fill out. I don't remember if my mom had to fill it out, but for each of us to fill out when it came to talking about my moods and all of that other stuff. And I was diagnosed with bipolar when my younger daughter was almost a year old. So postpartum normally happens around, like, right from birth to around 9 months ish. That's the most common time. And it didn't even start for me until she was almost a year. So yeah. How
Well,
about for yourself?
I don't consider that I had any kind of postpartum. I did go through um, a state when at 3 weeks old when I had to have the gallbladder surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't gaining weight, and I was trying to nurse her, and I was stressed because of that not working
Mm-hmm.
out. And the day I came home from the hospital from having the gallbladder surgery, my husband had to go to work that night. And
Mm.
I remember sitting there holding her, nursing her, crying, that I was so, angry with myself that it had turned out
Mm.
the way it had turned out. And it was, the hormones and,
Yeah.
everything just piles up on you, and sometimes you just have to have that release and let it out.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
I never, you know, wanted to hurt myself or hurt her or um, anything like that. I mean, I was so thankful to have her. I just was
Mm-hmm.
so worn out and,
Absolutely.
been through so much and everything.
Yeah.
And it was almost as soon as I realized that, boy, whew, this is a lot, then it started getting easier, especially when I started formula feeding her and he could
Yep.
feed her then when he was there. And, there was just a lot of things that kind of lessened that stress, you know. But
Absolutely.
I never really got what I would call, postpartum.
Yeah. Postpartum is a mood disorder versus a situational depression, which has a reason, like you're not able to nurse because you have this expectation, you're grieving the loss of that expectation. You're
Hmm.
not able to move much because you've just had surgery. You're
Hmm.
grieving. That's different than a depression. That's a grief. And another person just needs to know that that's how it works sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a whole nother thing there, Indigo. Another reason she was afraid to try for their own children was their birth mom had postpartum psychosis. And I was worried I would be prone to it. Now, postpartum psychosis is a whole nother beast. And yes, you would be prone to that because that would be part of the um, psychotic mental illnesses. And if you have a person who has had a psychotic mental illness like myself, then your offspring have a higher chance, not a complete, it's going to happen, but a higher chance that they will have something like this.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of psychological issues with the infertility.
absolutely.
I mean, I don't know, probably, I don't know what the statistics would be, but probably most women who find themselves dealing with infertility are going to
Hmm.
have some sort of depression,
Hmm.
because it is just you feel like a failure as a woman. That's the one
Absolutely.
thing a woman can do that a man can't do. It's like it really does cause issues about yourself, that
And you
kind of
don't want
thing.
it to. It's not like you're sitting there going, well, I'm just going to sit here and be hard on myself for a while now.
Yeah, no, no.
No,
And
no,
you
not at
try to,
all.
I would definitely try to think my way out of reasons why things did or didn't happen, you know.
Mhm.
Like there
Yep.
there always had to be a logical explanation to things.
Absolutely. Yep.
And there is a lot of things that happen in our lives that there is no logical explanation.
No.
And you just have
That's
to
for
have
sure.
faith in God that, He does know where it's going and what's going to happen. So,
Okay. Um, Brazy had postpartum depression after her second child. There we go. They could not bond with her. It took 2 years before I felt a bond. That is rough. That
mm,
is so rough. I was terrified. My third, I breastfed, and the bond was immediate. I am so grateful I was able to breastfeed. My mom did not have um, breasts that would function with breastfeeding. They were not formed in a way that breastfeeding would have been something she could have done. So she had to bottle feed both of my sister and myself. Um, and that I have to say was one of my favorite parts of my children and their babyhoods. My first one, because I was pregnant with my second one while I was still nursing the first one.
mhm.
I nursed her until she was a year old. I looked really funny having this baby laying on top of this big baby bump, very obviously baby bump, and I'm sitting here nursing this child. So when she was a year old, I stopped nursing on her first birthday. 2 months later, yeah, 2 months later, I gave birth to another baby and started nursing another baby.
And
So
how did
yeah,
your first daughter take that?
perfectly fine. Yep.
Did she?
She was happy to be done. It's not like she was really nursing a lot by the end of it. It was just every now and then, maybe just before a nap, she'd have a go, or something like that. Just before bed, she'd have a
Mhm.
go. She was eating most of her meals the way any other 1-year-old would be.
Yeah.
My younger daughter, though, was definitely much more difficult to wean. And it wasn't because I didn't want to wean her, it's because she did not want to wean. So her first birthday came and went, and nothing changed. Um, I went away for a weekend for a ladies' retreat, and I'm thinking, okay, she'll be done by the time I get back. Everything will be better. First thing that she comes, grabs me, Mom, we're having some breakfast. Okay. Yeah, so I wasn't in a rush to wean her, but yeah, now she wasn't exactly in a rush to let go either, so that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I really, didn't plan very well for being a mother because of the time of the infertility made me,
Mm,
it was almost like if I think about it too much, I'm going to get
mm-hmm.
upset that I'm not able
Yep.
to. So I really didn't know what I was getting into. And then being an older mom,
Yes.
there, and then only having the one too. There
Yep.
were just a lot of things that I was like, man, for somebody who wanted to have kids so bad, you definitely didn't know what you were getting into.
No, I know, right?
And it's
Yes.
like, of course, back then we didn't have the internet. You couldn't
No.
Google things. You
Oh,
took your
oh
doctor's word
yeah, for
for it. Whatever
sure.
they told you is what you didn't know. You
Yep.
didn't know you had rights as a patient, and just
I
all
know,
the things
right?
that we know about today. We did not know. I did not know about
For
then.
sure. Yeah.
So,
And yeah,
kind of with my
Breezy.
daughter,
Mm-hmm.
the way that I raised her
Mm-hmm.
was pretty much learn from what I didn't know, learn from the mistakes I made.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make your own mistakes, but let me help
Yep.
you navigate the things that I navigated that I didn't know any better. And it was so funny when she was expecting her daughter, she read a book, and in the book it said, we're not living in grandma's time anymore. So a lot
That's
of the
right.
things that grandma did, even your mother did, for you as a baby, we don't do those things now. We do it this
Oh
way or
yeah.
whatever. And
Like
so
mixing
my daughter
7-Up with
said,
milk.
yeah, my daughter said,
How good is that?
we're going to have, problems because, we're not going to see eye to eye on what we need to do with her. And I said, oh, we
That's right.
will. We will, because we're going to love her. That's what we're going to do. And whatever
Yeah,
she needs
yeah,
to be loved, we're going to love her and do that. But there were
yeah.
so many things that I had to like bite my tongue, like, ooh, don't say that. And I'd be over here Googling stuff myself and be like, oh no, the correct thing to do is such and such. And she's
Yeah,
like, it's killing you that you can't do what you think is the best, thing. And it's like, I know, but I have to learn and change with the times. You have to do,
absolutely.
you know.
Yep. The book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, just came out maybe a year or two before I had our first daughter.
Yep.
And
See.
so that really did help a lot.
Yep.
It was the end all be all, but it sure gave me a place to start and get a reasonable start, I think, to a degree. It gave me an insight as to, because like you said, there wasn't the internet, gave me an insight into developmental stages when you're at this point and this point and this point. So like what to expect when, why are you feeling like this? When is your milk going to come in? What's going to happen when all
Right.
of that. What a great book. It was a wonderful book. Like I said, it wasn't the end all be all, but it gave some good information.
Well, and they say that you shouldn't, um, like for instance, with my weight loss surgery, they said don't watch a video of them doing the surgery, because it'll freak you out and you won't want to do it.
I
And
watched
I
4.
felt the same way about giving birth. My daughter was like,
Yes.
well, what's this and what's, I said, well, you don't want to know. I mean, it's better just to do what they
Yeah.
tell you, because if you know too much about it or you've seen it, you may chicken out. And once that baby's in there, it's got to come out some way. So it's like,
Yeah.
don't look at that. Don't think about, all the things that could go wrong or might go wrong.
Yes. Yes,
I mean, there
exactly.
are things that we are privy to now because of the internet that some things I wish I had never
Absolutely.
known,
Yeah.
but it's nice to know now when my doctor tells me something that I can at least look it up and get an idea,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
are they way
Patients are
off?
so much better informed, right?
Yes.
And speaking of which, and you had weight loss surgery, I had weight loss surgery. I think that's going to have to be our next conversation for another day. We will maybe book you in. I have people booked in almost every Tuesday this month. I have nobody booked in for a Thursday. So if anybody wants to talk to me on some Thursday, like in 2 days, would be okay.
Okay.
Give me a shout. Let me know. Or we can
Sounds
talk
good.
bariatric. But yeah, that's yeah, I think that should definitely be our next conversation, because again, there's a lot of people with a lot of misinformation, and getting information from somebody who's been there, it's again not going to be the end all be all. It's going to be our experiences. But at least it'll be okay. So what do you do when you can't poop? And trust me, you're not going to be able to poop, right? So Echo's going, oh yeah,
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and there are things that just somebody who's wanting to diet and lose weight that you learn going through the
Yeah,
process.
yeah,
That all the years I was trying to lose weight, nobody ever explained it
right.
to me the way they explain it to
Mhm.
you when you're getting ready to have surgery. So, um, and I'm gonna do a video on that too, because there are certain things that it's almost like they're secrets. Like we can't tell the general population about these things. But
No,
when you're going to have the surgery, well, okay, we're going to share this with you because you're going to have the surgery.
yeah,
But it's like the general population does not need to hear these things. So
right.
I really want to do a video on that of just, things that I said, well, why didn't somebody tell me this years ago? I mean, why
I
am
know,
I
right?
only now hearing
I
this?
know, right,
You know,
absolutely. So Blessed to Crochet, Mary, absolutely. You're in on Thursday. I will talk to you a little later this evening or tomorrow. I need to help a little bit more, probably with Crystal and getting things going. So I'm going to say good night to everybody. Echo, thank you so much for being here. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I only had to cry once.
Okay. Well, thank you for
Almost
asking me.
twice.
Yeah.
So,
Only, we tried not to go there, so.
yeah, we generally didn't, but the difficulty is real. So if anybody does, male or female, in the chat or anywhere in between, has questions regarding infertility, give either myself or Echo an email. Her email has been running through the Nightbot. Mine is my other's keeper is at gmail.com. So either one of us would be more than happy to work with you to talk about infertility, to talk about treatment options. Echo would be the person to talk to if you're American. I would be probably a better person to talk to with the Canadian system, just because, and it's not through the physical whatever, it's through the systems, because sometimes
Yeah.
that's a whole nother ball of wax, that whole medication system, medical system, that's the word I'm looking for. So anyway, yes, get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to help you out. Have a great night, everybody. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. We will be doing Psalm. Oh, sure, of course. Now I'm not looking at it. I think tomorrow is Psalm 40, but just let me check and be sure. Tomorrow is Psalm 36. Sorry, Psalm 36 tomorrow, Psalm 40 on Thursday. So I will talk to y'all later.
Bye,
Have an
everybody.
excellent evening. Bye-bye.
We come from different paths, but we're not alone. Carrying stories in the shadows, aching to be shown. Through the pain and healing, together we will rise. With every open heart, we see through clearer eyes. You are my brother, my sister, my friend. In this space, the broken pieces mend. No hate, just love and hands to hold. A place where every soul is bold. I'm my brother's keeper, I'm my sister's guide. Standing here together with nothing left to hide. We lift each other up when the world feels torn apart. We're keepers of the flame, we're the healers of the heart. Some come with scars, some come with dreams. In this circle, we're more than what we seem. No judgment here, just voices to be heard. Through laughter, through the tears, we find every word. I'm my brother's keeper, I'm my sister's guide. Standing here together with nothing left to hide. We lift each other up when the world feels torn apart. We're keepers of the flame, we're the healers of the heart. When the darkness calls, we'll light the way. When the darkness calls.